All right. I thought I would do a bit of humble bragging, but also like a genuine pointer to people who are struggling to find a woman. So, men who are struggling to find a woman, that I've learned over the years, and so on. But it's kind of a genuinely humble sort of bragging in a sense. And I know that seems like an oxymoron, but just hear me out. I am so utterly autistic that like six women were flirting with me and giving me every chance, and I just totally ignored it. You can lead me to water. You can lead me to the lake, and I will still only drink the waterboarding, if that makes sense. You know, like I had to be forced into like accepting a girlfriend. It's not because I don't want one, but I just never bothered to look. You know, and when people were offering themselves, I didn't pick up on it. And so, like, I've had every chance basically to be with a woman, you know, and like, I chose not to be, in a sense. Not because I didn't want a woman, but because I was more interested in being bros with my male friends and playing video games and stuff. And the seventh individual, or sorry, there's five women were flirting with me. One, being about 6 or 7 years older than me when I was 15, 16, literally asked me to make out, and I botched that. Um, um, you know, so I almost got groomed in a sense. But like, all these women were basically 8 to 9 out of 10 at least in like a regular sort of sorting. Like they were not like ugly. There was one that was like a 3 out of 10 almost. They had a facial disfiguration. But they had a personality that I jived with, and I like we were friendly and stuff. We were good friends basically, and I approached her and said, "Hey, look, do you want to have a relationship? Because I think we get along together and so on." And she told me that she wouldn't do it because I would betray her for another woman. And she named the woman like a decade and a half or a decade before I met the woman that I supposedly betrayed her for. And like, she should not have known the name of that woman except by God's revelation. Um, um, but in essence, I made a move towards the 3 out of 10 women, looks wise. Tentatively, when I was about 30, and then suddenly this other woman that I actually was with, and I botched that one too, technically, lack of experience in relationships and stuff, and sort of being a very intense person and a little socially stupid, and being a little lefty oriented, which doesn't help as a man very much in relationships with women if you want to keep them. And the only reason why I was with that one woman that I jumped at is I didn't even really jump at her. I just like sat still, and like she's like, "You're my boyfriend now." I was like, "Okay, if you want, you know, I've been alone for like 10, 12 years, no woman contact and so on, you know." So I'm a lucky man in terms of looks, I suppose, in some sense. and how I carry myself. I'm a very fight-oriented individual, a little quick-tempered and stuff like that, which is kind of what um, drove the final wedge in between her and I after she broke up with me, and I might have had a chance to be with her and so on. But if my friends were if my friends were genuinely prophetic, she will come back to me at some point, and we'll live a good life together for the rest of our lives. So I'm banking on God here, and I know that some people will consider it psychotic, but she's worth at least about a decade. It's been about 8.5 years now of waiting just for her until I'm like 40, 41, and then I'll move on. And at least I gave it the good old college try for her and so on. Because I'm not too worried about my looks or my physique or something like that. Like I've shown my Battle Scars Fight and Sin video. It's the third or fourth video I made on this channel. It's like the third or fourth oldest video. You know, I'm not exactly a six-pack kind of guy, but I'm built like a gorilla, and I've got like hardcore scars that I can impress a woman with, probably. You know, saying I've risked death and mutilation, and I survived it all. You know, strong genes, basically. You know, been through the fire. And what I learned is my natural disposition and way I carry myself in real life, it might not show online, but when I'm kind of like vibing and chilling, I can have a real positive impact on women's days, or at least for a little while, by smiling at them and saying hello and stuff and just being friendly and just chilling out. And I've begun to, I suppose almost out of desperation, being a voluntary celibate, waiting for this one woman. So it's like a combination of incel and volcel. Involuntary and voluntary celibate. Because like I've refused to look for another woman, so that's the volcel part, but I can't be with the one woman I want to be with, which is the incel part. Right? Like it's a code of honor thing, not a total inability to get women thing necessarily. Is I've learned I have the rough materials to seduce a woman. And I had a homeless girl on top of this cuddle with me for support and feeling better about herself and stuff like that. A little bit ago, and I was like, okay, yeah, you can cry on my shoulder and stuff, you know, and I'll tell you some stuff that might make you feel better and gives you some good advice, because she was mentioning that she felt like she was being mistreated and misrepresented by someone else. And she had a temperament that was instantly generous and kind towards me, so I was like, okay, you know, I think I know what her problem is a little bit. And on top of that, I've also literally, this is like fundamentally a fact of life thing, a literal cuckold asked me specifically to be the bull that screws his girlfriend. And I turned it down simply because I did not want to do that to a man, and I found the idea of driving a wedge between a man and a woman in their relationship disgusting. I would not participate in doing that, even though I'd been lonely for 2 years after my ex broke up with me. And what I'm learning is it's only my own stubbornness in not approaching other women that is why I am alone for all but 4 months of my 22 years of adulthood. And What I want to say for advice is, after all this bragging, all this bragging, and you can see my face, you can see I'm a broad-shouldered kind of guy, I'm a big guy and stuff, is despite all this, and they didn't, they looked at me like this, this is what I present myself as all the time practically. So it wasn't like I had like a gold Rolex and they were flirting with me because they saw I had all the bling or something. It was just me, and the way I carry myself and stuff. And what I want to say is that to men who have problems attracting women, your character is what keeps a woman in some sense. There's a few things that help with keeping a woman and maybe even introducing her to yourself over time as a keeper. And looks are the first boundary in some sense, but disposition at the moment, your temperament, your mood, is actually a huge indicator of when a woman's attracted to you. Now, I'm not saying this as someone that's managed to succeed and get a wife and have kids and stuff like that, but that's why I'm bragging about all the other stuff I got. Because this is what I learned after looking back on it and going, okay, I didn't approach them, I didn't think about impressing them. What is it that actually attracted them to me, and so on? Because 8 women attracted to you is that's a reasonably large amount of women when you haven't even ran into one basically for like 10 years. When you're staying alone at night all the time playing video games. I literally, one of them fell into my lap when I wasn't looking for one. I was like, well, I guess I'm yours now. Like adopting a cat almost that follows you home or something. It didn't work out for long, but like I said, I'm waiting on God to bring her back, basically. So that we can have a permanent relationship and have kids and stuff like that. And the way you carry yourself about, your demeanor, your the sort of vibe you're getting from me with my tone of voice, with how I'm loose with my movements, but I'm also not here, I'll do an example of what not to do. That kind of thing. Is the easygoing aspect is kind of important because it denotes a certain level of confidence in yourself and how your mode of being. And autism is a little intensely focused, and they like to be hard chargers often and so on, which is why women are off-put by them on some level. And I am autistic. So this nature is not necessarily just the entirety of it. I actually kind of got into the mindset of being like this on purpose more often over time, and it just grew naturally and so on. Because I was a very autistic child. And this is my version of socializing, basically. I'm still very socially inept. But you can kind of see how I've got some of the tricks up my sleeve in some sense. Now, the other thing is approaching a woman while being loose is holding yourself loosely but confidently, is when you initially approach a good-looking woman or something, you're sort of saying I got something you probably like. I think I would be something you like. And when you're saying it to a woman as a proposition, and you're, if they're not 10 out of 10 hotties that everyone's bothering all the time, then women down the rung from 10 out of 10 will actually kind of pick up and go like, hey, that's kind of nice. I like this. And so on. And you'll flatter them because you're giving them attention that's positive and saying you have value to someone else, even if it's me and I don't look the best. And if you do look good, then that's just like, that's even easier, right? And the looseness and casualness that you carry yourself is a sort of, it's like mood music in a movie or something, like the Charge of the Rohirrim, the Charge of the Riders of Rohan, epic orchestra when they charge after the King Theoden's speech, death, 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 you know, charging into the orcish hordes, or like the Star Wars Death Star trench run music, or something like that. Basically, that's mood music in a sense. Now that's epic mood music, but you can have like a certain vibe in how you carry yourself and stuff like that. And that's sort of like a body language version of mood music to help them consider you a mate, because they don't want someone who's high strung and erratic and always like, because that denotes a certain potentiality for anger when or snapping. You know how you jump on a pressure cooker and it eventually blows all the way up, or you bottle something up and you just keep it in there and it expands and expands and tries to expand and the pressure builds up and then it blows up. Yeah, that's what that's about. And just I was high strung with one girl, a ninth girl, who stood up for me in elementary school, and I had a crush on her. She was the first crush I had. And around grade 10 or 11, I think it was grade 11, I like the last day of school, I just happened to see her alone by her locker. And I thought, well, I don't think I'm going to get I think she's going to refuse me completely. But just to get it over with and to say I at least tried, I'll ask her out, right? And she was polite and rejected me. But I came away from it happy because I'd worked up the courage to even ask a girl out so that I knew what it was like, and so on. Now, I'm not going to say that the worst that can happen is they say no, because I know that they can kind of like talk behind your back and stuff. The British show Adolescence deals with a storyline of a girl basically starting a bullying campaign to wreck a boy's life in school, which is why he snaps and murders her and so on. And I'm not saying that you're going to murder a woman because she doesn't like you, but like a woman could do that with you if they feel insulted. And I think I also saw a story from someone who felt really awful about themselves because they asked a girl out, and the girl said, "Wow, I'm so ugly. You think you have a chance with me?" And I don't want people who have physical, who are possibly less handsome than me, thinking that that's not going to possibly happen. What I'm saying is, as someone who's been lucky, not even thinking about it particularly to the point that I completely miss like six chances, is the demeanor and the smoothness and the casualness and they're just willing to ask a woman out and declare that she's valuable enough as a person to be interesting to you and so on. Or at least initially interesting, which is kind of what they're considering. And that she looks good enough for you to be like, hey, I want that. Is typically going to combine in a way that they will respect you more and so on. Your general behavior in their knowledge throughout time, if you're at like a school or something and they get to kind of hear rumors about you, or they see you behaving day to day in the same class or something, is going to inform them about you. And if you carry yourself relatively casually, except when someone's like physically attacking you or something like that, or you have a certain vicious wit to mock people who mock you, right? You fight on the same level that they escalate to, but better at it than them, and you don't start fights, is a good way for women to respect you. They want a person who can fight really well at any given level that is required, but knows what level is required and doesn't start fights particularly. And that casualness and laid backness kind of indicates a certain casual, like not being high strung and prone to snapping tantrum wise, and confidence that if they don't know your if they don't know who you are very well, then confidence is a huge one. And the reason why confidence is a huge one and how you carry yourself as someone with confidence is because, generally speaking, people with confidence don't force confidence. It's not like you screw up your courage when you're terrified and you face the demons and you're shitting your pants, but you're doing the thing anyways, and so on. That's important at your limits, and that's going to be inevitably kind of your first forays into talking with women in a flirtatious way and so on. So don't get too discouraged if you're a little like that. A little bit of experience can really calm you down and so on. And it really is about experience, because a woman is an unknown to a lot of people, especially autistic guys. And you're probably going to screw up a lot in the beginning, but as you live and experience things and you make small talk with women a little bit, or you talk about the weather, it's like, as someone with a 140 IQ as well, who's really autistic, so it's like idiot savant syndrome basically for me. I'm like an idiot in a lot of things, and I'm kind of I'm gifted in a certain few things. Um, um, I'm okay. How do I put this? The confidence thing is really, really, really important. Um, And I mentioned how you can screw up in the beginning, but you need to go through that particular phase just to get to begin it in the first place, which I didn't do until grade 11, basically, which is why I entirely missed like 6 or 7 out of 8 opportunities, because I didn't leap at it when I was just like, they're like shoving food under my face, and I'm like, I'm not hungry. I'm starving, but I'm not hungry. So, but just to begin approaching women is important, and let the confidence sort of seep into you by exposure to women, interactions, social interactions with women increasing, and so on. And then the confidence will just naturally sort of seep into you as you succeed here and there, and you'll learn a little bit more about what doesn't work and what works and so on in the right situations. And it's literally just experience the thing as much as possible, and you'll get better at it. And that's, you have to become a fool to become wise, is one of the sayings. And it's literally like you have to accept that you're an idiot when it comes to something and try it out anyways, looking to improve based on your experience and your own brain power. And just have a will to experiment until you learn the details, and then you know your way around the world and so on. And the reason why confidence is so important is because the people that are at the edge of their crapping their pants at the edge of their seat are the people that don't have a lot of exposure to these things. It's kind of like how successful parents, first child is like a helicopter parent kind of thing, where they're always hovering around the baby and always like, oh my God, he's saying gaga. Does that mean he's choking on his own spit? But after like the third kid, you're like, oh, he's gurgling. Just pat him on the back once. He'll spit it out. you know, when it's actually happening or something. You know what I mean? You know how to deal with it. So you're just kind of almost like, confidence is almost like experience and laziness from not having to put maximum effort to succeed in something. And you can do that because you've done it. And the thing is, as you learn to experience it, the unknown becomes known more, and you don't have to be afraid of the infinite possibilities of disaster, because you've experienced the situation and you're kind of like, okay, well, it's not going to be the worst thing ever, and so on. And even if it is pretty bad, my suggestion is don't just give up because something really bad happens. In common sense, right? Like if you ask a girl out and she's like, oh my God, I'm so ugly, you thought you had a chance with me, that's a disaster, but that's not the worst thing. The worst thing is like going like pinning a girl to the wall and going, I'm going to fuck you, and then getting a rape charge or a threat of sexual assault charge. Don't do the stupid, hostile thing with a woman. And in the case of the woman saying, I'm so ugly, you thought you had a chance with me, just say, not exactly, but, I thought I'd try because I thought you were a decent person. Yeah, just kind of a little tiny jab at their being a jerk to you, but kind of like I was saying, I was thinking you'd be a better person than you are. But in a sort of like, that's why you approach them, because you thought that, and then maybe they'll be like, oh, okay, and that's a very light touch kind of jab, right? But it's also like partly a retort to to it's a like it's almost like a backhanded compliment, but it's not like really like separate. It's almost like saying like, I thought you had what it takes to be a nice person, and you failed in this regard. You know, um, in this one particular situation. My assessment of you was wrong. I admit it, but you've proven it in a negative way. And some people will take that to mean like, oh, I can just insult you because you insulted me and so on. That's not what I mean. What I mean to say is you almost like give like it's like it's a backhanded compliment because you're pointing to her being nasty to you in that one particular situation, which proves you can give, not just take, but also that you were thinking she's better, you had a high opinion of her. And then she'll kind of go like, she might actually find you interesting because you stood up for yourself a little bit, but you also kind of said, like, I've been watching you for a while and I thought you were a good person because of it, and so on, and you just kind of, in this case, were not. It's kind of like that almost. Like there's a calculus to this. And what I want to say is this is not the exact way to do it. This is not the way that people should neg necessarily. Negging is not a good thing. The pickup artists generally are very asshole, and they can only pick up insecure women typically, and so on, it seems. And they can't keep women typically, or the pickup artists themselves are not suitable husbands for having a stable relationship and children. That's the goal: stable relationship with a loving wife and husband and children. That's the ideal situation. Everything else fails in comparison on some level. So, you don't want to listen to pickup artists particularly too much. But this is my experience and so on. And by the way, when I'm saying the backhanded compliment thing, I'm specifically saying if she goes as far as to say, wow, I must be ugly because you are such a loser and you thought you had what it takes to even impress me a little bit. And then you kind of, well, I thought you were a kind person, but, maybe I was wrong. you know. So but notice also how this represents an approach that you did, and then you pull back and don't worship her. And it might even be the first shit test, which is something you should find out about. Because women test men to find out if they're going to be suitable for fathering children. It's not just genetics. It's not just having an intense focus capacity in life. It's not just about casualness in the sense of like, oh, when I'm not having anything big and important happen, I'm casual and chill. It's what happens when someone throws you an absolute curveball that's going to beam you in the face. Or like a curveball that looks like it's going to beam you in the face, and it like he goes like this and then kind of goes like that. I've used those in pitching before when I was 12 years old. So how you carry yourself determines some of that ability to respond to and deal with. I used it to great success, throwing a curveball that starts at someone's head and then goes into the strike zone. And eventually some of them caught on to it and started hitting the ball quite well, so I had to switch to curveball that looks like it's going into the strike zone and then falls out of it a little bit, and then making them second guess that way and so on. And there's an art to it that is only gainable through experience, is what I want to say. And the final thing I'll mention is practice your smile. You don't have to go like You know, you can kind of go, kind of like a, a sort of casual grin almost. I know a grin is kind of thing, but don't be like all the time. Be kind of like, you know, practice your crooked smile basically, and have a twinkle in your eye when you're looking at the woman and so on. And it might only work 50% of the time for like the hottest men. I'm not saying I'm necessarily the hottest, but I've had 8 women approach me, so like, I got something going for my looks. Even when I'm autistic so much I can't even like capitalize on the offer they're making in most cases. But yeah. So like, you know, if you even if you only like even if your best smile and twinkle in your eye kind of look and casual aspect and body language only gets like 5% of women to smile at you, you know what I mean? Like, just don't take a woman's negative judgment of you too seriously, as long as you haven't been like pinning her to the wall and saying like have sex with me. You know what I mean? Like, don't be rapey. But like, even if you have to be like, hey baby, like in the most dumb way possible to break the ice, not with her. Well, I mean, yes, with her, but like, I mean more in the terms of like even beginning to tend to approach women that you want to be with. Um, then do it, because the like someone who doesn't try is a loser by default. But someone who practices despite having like a bald head with like curly hair that just juts out at the back, kind of, and so on. Um, if they carry themselves properly, there's going to be a woman for them, as long as they just don't let their emotions and like their fear and stuff overwhelm them. That way, the body language and the way you carry yourself as actually casual and not too fearful, and you can't fake it exactly, but you can kind of fake it until you make it, in the sense of you fake it to get experience talking to women, and then you become less afraid of women, and then the casualness just kind of gradually emerges. Trust the process. Trust the process. And that's what I've learned. Because, like, I used to be terrified of women, and you might, like, I mean, I had 8 women approach me and, like, ask me for dates and stuff, and, I'm telling you, the only reason why is because of my looks, my physical body, and I can't take credit for that character-wise. Um, basically. But this is the lesson I've learned over the years. And I recently learned specifically smiling to women and saying hello and just being really casual and vibing and just enjoying things and so on, and being kind of like happy to see them in a way. Um, you know, it, almost every woman likes it when someone does that on some level. There's a very few women that don't like it on some level. And when a woman enjoys your company, basically because you're making her feel valued and appreciated, which is the purpose of that kind of thing. It's not like, I'm the best, you suck as a woman, but I'll tolerate you. That's not how you do it. It's to make her feel valued and appreciated because someone sees her as something desirable. And I know people will say, oh, that's objectifying women and so on. I mean, I guess if you do it based on looks and nothing else for the entire time, then yes, you are, and don't do that. But when you don't know her and you just see her, she is a physical object in a sense. Just like you are in a real, literal, philosophical way, your physical objects, your embodied souls. But your soul determines your body, and that body, the way your soul communicates to your body, determines your body's behavior, which communicates to her body senses, which are interpreted by her soul in a way that determines through that process what kind of soul you are. So having an ugly soul, in a sense, is a good way to sabotage, no matter how sculpted your face looks, or your body is chiseled abs or something. Having an ugly soul is the best way to sabotage, no matter how many natural advantages you have, your chances to be with a woman. And having a golden soul, in some sense, is the best way, even if you're physically ugly, to attract the right woman for you. And like the best way to put it, and I don't mean this in like a be angry kind of way and mutter it to yourself all the time kind of thing. The best way to approach a woman that doesn't value you in some sense, if you think you got something what it takes and can improve from where you are to where you're going to be, and so on, is if a woman rejects you, even kind of strongly, if you offer your interest to her and she says, I hate you because you're ugly, is that's not the woman for you in the first place. She was never for you. You just found out. And you still got that one woman waiting for you to find her who will value you. There's a well, it's October, so it's almost Halloween. So this is actually the perfect movie for you to watch. Look up Disney's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. It's about Ichabod Crane, and it's about another guy and a woman. And Ichabod Crane and the guy, at their best, in some sense, are the right way to be a man. And the moral of that story is, even if Ichabod Crane doesn't get the most beautiful, richest woman ever, and the other guy does, he settles for a woman that gets him what he wants, which is love and good cooking, which is one of Ichabod Crane's favorite things, right? It's like he gets what he's mostly after in the right woman after giving up on the literal embodiment of female perfection. And again, this ties into Christianity being against pornography in some sense, where if you're chasing after the porn fairy Tinkerbell, you're never going to get the real woman who's not perfect looking. You can definitely approach women based on looks, and there's a certain degree of, yes, objective beauty exists on a fundamental ranking scale level physically, but at the same time, on a human level, there's also, like, on the other side of it is also that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So there's a certain subjective beauty and objective beauty. Objective beauty is the commonly agreed upon, multiple agreements kind of thing, and subjective beauty is what you see in them. And you don't have to worry too much about objective beauty. And stand up for your woman if someone calls her ugly, basically, and so on. But the subjective beauty, what you see in her, is what matters for you to be with her. And a little bit of casualness, a little bit of happiness to see them, a little bit of appreciation, a little bit of, hey, you're kind of interesting to me. And it's sort of like, you can reject me, that's fine. I can find another woman. Kind of panache almost. It's almost mysterious in a sense. You're like, that's sort of like, I realize that this is not going to be obvious to people until they've experienced this enough by being with women. And it's one of those things that's almost like, I said don't fake it, don't fake it. But like, it's almost like you fake it until you make it, in the sense of like the Way of Kings, Dalinar Colin saying sometimes a hypocrite is just a man in the process of changing from where they are to where they should be. There's a certain degree of fake it until you make it sense that is legitimate. You have to fake it to first start trying to make it, and then as you learn the ins and outs, you begin to actually make it. And I know that this is going to fall on some people's deaf ears, but I got to insist on doing it. It's literally the only way that you're ever going to succeed. Like I said, I had women throwing themselves at me, and I still didn't succeed because I failed at that particular thing. And even if you're physically the most deformed freak ever or something, if you try enough and you get good enough at it and you just accept that not every woman's going to reciprocate, then you'll eventually sort into the right woman for you. Almost guaranteed. Or you're a lot more likely to succeed, not guaranteed. So maybe it's not 100%, but maybe it's like 30% chance overall through life. But 30% is literally infinitely greater than 0%. And it's a lot better than 0% on a sort of like 30% versus 0% chance. And there's probably about 4.5 billion men in the world and 4 billion women in the world. So if you carry yourself with a little bit of conviction, and you are a little laid back more than like, oh my god, I gotta do things, kind of thing. And you work on that smile and sparkle in your eye. Yeah, I'm actually kind of enjoying this right now. Actually, so like it's sort of like it's not exactly that you fake it. It's sort of like you remember something that made you happy. It's like the Peter Pan thing. Think of a happy time or something, or think of a happy place, and you can fly. It's kind of like that in a sense. Something, even if you have to fake it by remembering something random that made you happy, sort of follow through with that with the smile and sparkle in your eye, and think like, almost like you begin to bridge a gap in being happy to see the woman, even if she's going to reject you possibly, and even if she does reject you. And by the way, when I mentioned that sort of like that backhanded compliment thing, that's like a very finessed thing. Don't lead with that kind of thing. And don't do it to anything roughly less insulting than, oh my god, I'm so ugly, you thought you had a chance with me. Don't do it with anything less insulting than that, roughly speaking. And by the way, also don't take no as an insult. There's a lot of reasons why women will say no. And also don't despair or lash out, which is what I failed at doing when my ex broke up with me, because she wasn't actually like 100% against me at the time. She was just not sure if she wanted to be with me. And I failed that test, and then she left. Big time. The no is sometimes a test to see how you'll do when faced with a setback to test your confidence. And if you acknowledge and accept her response, then that means you're not going to be greedy, grabby guts, kind of like desperate to get into her pants no matter what, and rapey. It's like a test of like underlying rapiness of the man, basically. And that's, she might not think of you at the moment as a potential mate, but if she's not blatantly insulting you, then, and maybe even if she is actually, think of it like that, your response and your confidence in yourself as a person who can possibly maybe get another woman um, will actually rebound in her assessment of you as part of the process of interaction to maybe make her think twice about you, even if she totally insulted you. And that's what shit tests are, in a sense. They're testing the man's response to setbacks by people smaller and weaker than they are. And it's a fundamental biological trait in women because they don't want a man that bashes the baby's brains in for crying 12 hours a day, who won't just smash the kid's jaw out because they don't like that they're goo goo gagging annoyingly, or something like that. Or picking fights with random people, other guys and stuff like that, just to prove their own ego and stuff. If a woman does, so like that's like what that's about and stuff. So don't take it as just like a literally you're just too ugly for me to consider ever, and I hate you. It's also like a form of like, how does he handle this response? It's a test, in other words. And you might fail it even if you're confident and casual. You might, but it's like a sort of like it's like a second chance kind of situation almost, in a sense. Treat it like it's a second chance to prove your confidence and so on. And I know that sounds a little weird, but the reason why I'm not with my ex-girlfriend, I'm pretty sure, is I failed that second chance shit test, basically, of a rejection. And I lashed out and was tantrumy and so on. And, I have the looks to get 8 women to throw themselves at me. My ex was one of them, and I failed that, and that's why I'm single for the last 8.5 years. Yeah, because, yeah. And you might say, oh, well, why are you still single if you know how to get women? And the answer really is, I only started even trying to appeal to women again, with my smile and sparkle in the eye and kind of casual, chill out vibe of saying hello to them and stuff and showing interest. Out of friendliness, because I was bored of being alone while outside smoking. So it's generic friendliness, if that's what it takes to start talking to women. And I got that because I interacted with women a little bit and so on. It wasn't even like hot women that I interacted with. That's the other thing. Oh, that's the other thing. Don't just obsess about hot women. Be friendly and talk to older women, ugly women, and middle of the road woman. Practice with them how to talk to a woman because they are women, right? Like it's like you don't have to just focus on like, oh, I have to get the 10 out of 10 hottie on the first try and so on. totally naive on how to deal with women. That's not going to work. Like, that's fundamentally like you're trying one shot, one kill at like 10 million kilometers. You know, you got to practice first. And sometimes that means shooting with a pea shooter instead of a 50 caliber. 22 caliber instead of a 50 caliber. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, yeah, you gotta work your way up to this stuff, basically, if you're not going to shit your pants and embarrass yourself on the one that matters to you in actuality. And just practice being friendly to people and stuff, and just chilling and vibing and stuff. Have a spine when someone challenges you or is aggressive unreasonably towards someone that's vulnerable or a friend or family. The manly defense against the wicked kind of thing is actually important. But the other part of it is a certain casual, like, I'll approach you close enough to ask you out, but I'll pull back if you don't want me. And that's fine by me. And ironically, that will actually attract them to you. Because even when you get a woman, the point is, you walk up to her, say, hello, I'd like you, and then you kind of saunter backwards casually, like casually walk backwards and smile at her and stuff like that, like you're inviting her. Because the initial approaching is saying, I'm available if you want. And the backing off is, you have to want me for me to get you. And I acknowledge that. And that's something that's very attractive to the woman. The woman likes to be the chooser in the sense of whether or not to get the man. Whereas the man has to be the chooser in the sense of whether or not to say they're available to the woman. And the woman decides whether she's available to the man by approaching him. So this has been an hour, but this is my approach to this stuff. I obviously don't have the massive success of being married and with kids and stuff like that. Like I said, I was so autistic, I missed the chance for like 6 out of 10 women. And there's the 7th woman and the 8th woman, which are a little different. The 7th woman was kind of a back and forth. But, we never quite connected. And the 8th woman is the one that I was like, oh, hello. And then she's like, you're my boyfriend. I was like, oh, okay. Well, it's kind of like, no, I can't be with you. You're, it wouldn't be right. And then she's like, oh my God, I want you even more. And I was like, oh, what did I just do? It took me 2 years to figure out that's what happened. After 4 months of a relationship and then her breaking up with me and so on. So looking back on it. Yeah. And this is what I learned by not going forwards with the offered chances out of the blue, for the most part, and having to kind of approach women. Like, I was just sitting down, kind of cross-legged, smoking, and kind of like, hey, how's it going? Just out of boredom almost, because I wanted to make people smile and have a good day. Like, it wasn't even like, I want this woman. It was more like, I just want to make someone smile and that'll make my day. Even if that's all you do, and if you fail, you fail, but at least you tried to make someone happy, And if that's the mentality it takes to get the right woman eventually and so on, then do that instead, because that's actually a really good way to do it. And that's how I learned that I have the best chances to get a new woman, because part of the reason why I didn't even try for 8.5 years, basically, is because I was like, I want this one woman, and I want her to come back to me, and I want to live my entire life with her and have kids with her and so on. And I basically was like voluntary celibate, like I said, in the sense of I was involuntarily celibate in regards to the one woman, but I was voluntary celibate because I was like refusing to go after any other woman at all. And you don't even have to like ask them out. You can just kind of go, hey, how's it going? Or hello, hey, or hey, to a woman passing by or something while you're sitting down on the sidewalk or standing around or something. Um, don't be like, oh, hey, baby, show us your tits, or like, hey, you're hot. Don't do that aggression sort of thing, the aggressive thing. Be casual. Be confident. And I already explained how to do that. So if you have to go through the video again, do it basically, because this is like what I discovered from being dragged into the ocean and not drinking versus having to find water in the desert and succeeding kind of approach. And I've had a lot of success making women smile, about 50% of them. Some of them are harder than others, just making the woman smile, practice that basically, and just kind of smiling at them, having a sort of happy look in your eyes, and saying, hey, how's it going? Or how's it going? Kind of having that tone of voice of just vibe and chill, bro, and relaxed, but kind of interested kind of approach. And that's how you get a woman, I think. I'm not sure 100%, but it's kind of what I look back on and go, oh, that's what happened with me and them. Like, I wasn't trying to get them. I was just sort of trying to be their friend because they were interesting to me. Like a guy almost, except maybe with a little bit of gentler, more encouraging treatment towards them than a guy, but trying to be their friend, mostly like a guy in a sense, except like more encouraging and gentleness. And for people who are autistic, this is the exact perfect way to approach a woman initially, at least. Now, I haven't gotten that far in relationships exactly, but I'm studying and practicing and learning a little bit of how to kind of wedge into getting a relationship. And this is the stuff that works initially, at least, and so on. And like I said, yes, I might have looks, and maybe they got 8 women to throw themselves at me on some level. But the techniques these are like techniques and ways of approaching things and so on that I'm describing are what worked for me the most. And admittedly, I might have a natural advantage with my looks, but they worked for me the most of anything in possibly getting a new woman after 8.5 years of not really talking to women at all. And it worked just like that, basically. It's like a week or 2 or a month or 2 months of like just focusing on this kind of aspect, and then like it just kind of happens. And it really is about casualness and like just sort of like being friendly and you really want, like, if you want a woman, like, okay, I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about in a real sense, and then I'll end there, basically. My ex-girlfriend, the one I actually jumped at, or was like, she's like, you're my boyfriend, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess, sure, why not, was the one that I was told would be mine, like, decades in advance. Like, her full name and everything. She wasn't even hitting puberty when she was talked about by my friends. So I was just like, who the hell are you talking about? You know, she wasn't even in the same country as me at the time. Yeah, like, how the hell would my friends know this? This is weird. Why is everyone talking about her like she's my girlfriend? You know, and then, like, eventually she popped up when she was older. You know, a lot older. And I was like, oh my God, I remember a lot of people talking about you like you were important, but I can't remember what they said because it was like 20 years ago or something. You know. So even with a literal God-given prophecy-backed girlfriend of being the one, supposedly, these are the lessons I had to learn to possibly get her back. Maybe this video will impress her or something if she watches it, and she'll like be like, okay, he's learned his lesson, and so on. And if not her as an actual soulmate in the fullest sense, and actually that's why I stopped. That's why I didn't chase women for the first while, because I was like, oh, I got a soulmate promised to me. I'm gonna just wait for her and be a good boy and not look for other women and stuff. And then I just gradually drifted into video games and drugs and video games again and so on. And like techno music and stuff like that, you know, or synthwave or something. But even with a God-given soulmate, these are lessons I needed to learn just to begin to appreciate her properly. And you know, if she's my promised catalyst for transformation to find my own woman in the future who's not her, then these are the lessons I learned the hard way to get to that point either way. So either she's coming back because I impressed her eventually, or she's coming back because she just doesn't have any other options, or she's not coming back and I have to find a new woman. Whatever the case, I'm prepared for the worst situation, which is her not coming back, because I have this experience. And this experience might be what brings her back in the first place, eventually. I don't know. But this is important stuff to learn, you know. A little bit of James Bond, not Daniel Craig's James Bond, but like Pierce Brosnan or earlier James Bond. His relationship with Moneypenny is kind of the right way to approach it. That's how you actually get a woman, typically, on some level. It's you know, there's about 25 movies or something, or 20 James Bond movies from that era, Sean Connery to Pierce Brosnan, and that the way he talks to Moneypenny is kind of a way to look at how to approach this, along with this particular video of mine. And if you think about it, Moneypenny is the woman that he teases but never commits to. But he constantly flirts with, and she's kind of enamored with him, and he's kind of happy with her, but he never commits to. With the right woman, you will commit to her, but you got to keep this energy going on some level. On some level, while also having a certain degree of the traditional marriage, like, I love you and I want to bring you on a date every so often and give you flowers on Valentine's Day and chocolates on our anniversary of marriage and stuff. Kind of upkeep. And you know, it'll it's a lot more likely to work out than whatever else you do in some sense. The other things that are interesting to a woman are if you're passionate and knowledgeable about a hobby, which shows a certain degree of intellect and willpower for building things and so on. Now, the woman will say they don't like particular hobbies and that they're red flags and stuff, but that is partly not because of the hobby itself entirely, but because of the kinds of people that are into them statistically or typically by experience. So if you have like a model airplane or something that's hard to glue together and stuff, that's very detailed, and you painted it really well and stuff like that, the woman, or like a functioning train set with like electrical motors and like tracks that switch and it's very complicated and so on, those sort of represent a harder tone of masculinity in some sense, with a certain degree of competence in intellectual or logical pursuits that impresses a woman. But if you're doing like Funko Pops or something that doesn't require any effort, you just buy a lot, you spend a lot of money on it, that's less likely to impress in some sense than if you just went and bought a gold Rolex or something. Some woman might be impressed by the Funko Pop collection, but I wouldn't bet on it, because you typically want something that requires a certain degree of skill and willpower and dedication to working with your hands to produce something of value. That's a very caveman value. Evolutionarily, I think it's the last step of evolution that we've been on for the last 500,000 years. You know, you can get away with pure bling, but it's about purity and intensity of the bling typically, not the extension of the bling. It's about the quality of the thing, the product, not the range, the volume of the product. Unless it's like farming, like you have a large wheat field or something like that, you know. But then that represents you work with your hands, tending crops and making things grow and having a stable income and being a provider for the community and being half a pioneer in some sense, be able to fight off bears and cougars and wolves and coyotes and bandits and Aboriginal chieftain raiders, you know, like a certain ruggedness and self control and toughness and the ability to make a complex system work in your favor for the benefit of others and yourself as well, which is what a family man is supposed to be on some level. So certain things are more emblematic of that than others, and that's why careers are so important in some sense, because it's about status, which is gained from being productive or valued through life and death situations and preventing death and saving lives and so on, or fighting people who are dangerous and succeeding and being strong in that sense. That's one of the reasons why women like someone who can fight, because it means they can protect. And you might not be able to do all these things differently, but the hobby thing is like a sort of nod to your tool making capabilities in a sense. So if you're not tool making, a lot of stuff doesn't really represent anything useful, particularly unless it's like like I have so much money I can waste it all on these things and like have like $1,000 a month left over on top of wasting all my money on Funko Pops. It's like a vulgar display of wealth potential, and then that will represent your capacity to make money. But if you put literally all your money in Funko Pops and you can only afford like 10 hot dogs a week, then that's not a proper display of wealth, which is why the Funko Pops thing fails, because many of the people that do it put all their money into it and don't have any money left over for taking the woman to expensive restaurants or something. That's what that represents. And it's a faulty display of wealth. And it doesn't display tool making potential. And that's what that's about. So pick your hobby, be passionate, maybe go towards the hobbies that require a little more discipline than you might otherwise, but you don't force it. You have to genuinely enjoy it and let your genuine passion show in your hobbies. But and you can play video games for a hobby. That's fine. That's again logic, puzzle solving, and so on. It's sort of a show of intellect in some sense if you can do things that she can't mentally and so on. I'll give one game example that you should probably play with her. You should play Divinity Original Sin, because I bought that game specifically just to have a friendship experience with my ex-girlfriend, and then we communicated our values to each other through the game, and then she became my girlfriend. Now I screwed it up eventually, but that's what kind of brought her to me in a real sense hardcore. That's what went from let's just be friends to let's be boyfriend, girlfriend, in some sense. And that game particularly, that specific game, Divinity Original Sin, is about a man and a woman going through various social conditions and experiences and making determinations of their values, both of the situation and of each other's responses to the situation. And there's a limited communication of alternative viewpoints in response to each other a little bit, in response to the situation. So pick your response carefully and be honest, and learn from the experiences in the social direction of like relationship experiences. And think of it specifically in the social domain and the moral domain. So your morality for the initial response, and then the response in relation to her response. And just don't play the game beforehand. Don't practice your, I think this is the perfect response to impress a woman thing. Just be honest. Yeah? And that's how you keep a woman, as far as I can tell. Or you get a woman, and so on. Don't wiki the exact stat boost you get for each of those social responses. There's a gameplay mechanics element to it. But I would play it blind and just be as authentic and your best self as possible. But don't lie about how harshly you feel about a particular individual in the game. When you get the roleplay dialogue options between the man and the woman, play with a woman that you want to date, and it'll give her a window into your soul, your best self, but be authentic. Don't lie on purpose. Don't manipulate her. And just give your most honest response. Um, maybe give your most honest response, and then she'll have like a window into your soul through the social interactions. And impress her with your gameplay mechanics potential and skill, in that regard through the game. It's a very good sort of like, not exactly dating. It's not a date. Don't treat it like a date. But if a girl's a friend with you and she's like, I'm bored, I wonder what games to play and stuff, buy a copy of Divinity Original Sin for herself, for yourself, and her, and play it together and see if she doesn't start dating you after. Yeah, yeah. As long as you're not like, I hate everyone all the time, kill everyone, blah, blah, blah. You know. Um, unless that's what she wants to play with. Maybe it's the second time you play her, maybe it's the first time and she just wants to kill everyone. And if she does want to kill someone, if she says, I want to kill this NPC, who's not aggressive at first, I just don't like them, or I just want to see what happens if I can steal their loot, just go with it, and take the penalty for doing it and so on. Or like if you happen to know that it's like a NPC that has sells something she wants and they won't drop the item if she kills them, the NPC, then be like, okay, well, why don't we buy the thing we need first and then we can kill him? It's like that kind of negotiation, right? And just pick the mechanics that best associate with your disposition and so on. Personally, I picked healing and two-handed tank, and she picked archer and magician, fire magician. Basically what I did was I said, I'll pick up where the mechanics necessary for balance. You pick what you just want to do flat out. It was sort of like I'll facilitate your desires in the video game. And I know people will say men should lead and so on, but that's just not entirely my style entirely. I'm a very reasonably, not online, laid-back person mostly. And I'm sort of a just vibe with life, chill kind of guy. And I'm an INTP, so I have a very process information and laid backness tendency in some ways. Whereas my ex is probably an INFJ, more action oriented. So this is about personalities meshing in some sense and like how to approach it and so on. And also she was the one that grabbed at me basically in the first place and completely did. And I was just like letting her do it. And that's kind of the vibe I was taking. I was like, well, let's let her sort of drive the relationship for some time, and I just kind of respond how I think I should and let her be the boss in some sense of where the relationship's going on some level. And that worked for a little bit. That might be something that's particular to some women for a little bit, but you do have to provide some initiative of your own volition and desires as well. And I kind of sort of did that a little bit, but not very much. And I think that might be also partly why she was driven away. You don't want to be domineering and tyrannical and like, oh, we're going to do this no matter what all the time, the way exactly I say and so on. I know people say women look to men for leadership and stuff, and that's kind of true. But a little bit of sort of like, okay, I've decided we'll do what you want. because I want that. You know, as opposed to like, oh, I don't really want to do it, but you said you do, so let's do it. You know, it's like, no, I'm specifically like, my foot's down, we're going to do what you want. That's kind of weird, but you know, that's kind of more the active approach than the passive approach in some sense. And yeah, that's what I've learned over the years. Long video, hour and a half, you know, kind of rambling, but you know, this is my dating and socializing with women pointers and details and methodology, way of being video. And I hope it helps people. I hope it covers basically all the bases primarily that need to be covered. Again, I'm speaking from someone who's good looking enough physically for 8 women to approach big time, and just so autistic that I completely ignored 6 of them. And I'm speaking also from the experience of being a relatively good looking guy, if a little scruffy and poor looking, not having a lot of status, but carrying myself really confidently and chill and vibe kind of ways. That I can initiate a friendly gesture to a woman and get a smile back relatively often. Again, the looks help a little bit in terms of physical body structure, how I'm built physically. But I've learned the difference between waiting for the perfect woman to come into your life and never getting a woman, and kind of approaching women and kind of getting success, even if I'm not the highest status man ever, through sheer ballsiness and confidence and relaxed casualness. And so, like, well, I don't need you, but you're interesting to me. Yeah, and that tends to. The second one is what I've been doing and making a lot of success, making women smile, at least. And the first version, I just happen to be very lucky on in some sense. And the difference between being lucky and putting in the effort, I don't want to say you strain yourself or flex as hard as you can all the time and like be like, oh, I'm terrified, but I'm going to force myself to do this, you know, kind of thing. But like putting in the effort a little bit to approach a woman at all in a sense. The success rate of opening up, making openings with being with a woman versus relying on divine providence to throw a woman into your face. I've had both, and I'm telling you, my experience of successes, small successes in opening the door for getting a woman, even if I didn't walk in, because I think that a genuinely interested man is going to walk in naturally of their own volition if they can even open the door for a woman. And this is about opening the door to getting a woman. And a little tiny bit about the initial playthrough of having a woman, because that's all the experience I've got. But that's the first hurdle, and that's the part that a lot of autistic men typically fail at, and so on. And a lot of people who maybe want a woman but are kind of physically ugly. This is important, especially for you, because you won't have the woman throwing themselves at you because of your physical body's looks. So the going for a woman thing that I've been mentioning is even more important. And and just literally just think about how you're carrying yourself and so on. So yeah, this is my guide to opening the door to getting a woman, um, even if you decide not to walk in to that door, that building or room of a woman. But just kind of carry forwards the general principles and um, listen to Jordan Peterson and his advice on these things. Watch Nick Freitas and his wife Tina, Queen of the Bees, and um, I'm not sure if they're a couple, but they do the same YouTube stuff, which is Clownfish TV. Geeky and Neon Sparkles. I'm not sure if they're a couple or not, but they've been doing their stuff together for a while. So I kind of wonder if they're a couple who just do YouTube together, as a living, as a a joint effort for their family or something. But either way, it's a long-standing relationship between a man and a woman in a very friendly fashion and so on. And these examples and my own advice combined will probably see you through most of life if you incorporate the lessons and so on. And I know it can be batshit terrifying to talk to a woman with interest because it means she judges you. And the ultimate judgment of a man. Okay, I'm going to blaspheme for a second. I'm technically blaspheming, and I know I'm blaspheming, but hear me out, right? The ultimate judgment in a man's life is not God, it's a woman, basically. you know, like, there's actually like a fundamental scientific fact that when a man meets a woman he's interested in, the initial response is fight or flight, like it's a giant lion trying to eat you. That's the common experience of a man. Maybe you don't get the experience of God, but you will definitely get the experience of a woman. And that experience is judgment. So, a little bit of panache and bravado and a little bit of tonight we dine in hell because we'll be sent there by the woman. Okay, well, we'll enjoy the ride there. That's kind of the approach to it that you should take in some sense. I'm kind of joking in a sense, but you know what I mean, like the sort of happy warrior kind of approach. Don't be miserable doing it. Enjoy yourself while doing it in some sense. And that's what's important. It's it's kind of like Dry Creek Wrangler School, right? Be safe, be wise or responsible, and have fun, right? It's kind of like have a beer, don't drink 2 6 of vodka. Have like a 6-pack over the course of the night. 6-pack, 6 hours, 1 beer an hour or something. Don't drink 5 times that within 2 hours, right? It's like pace yourself. Yeah. And stay true to your woman. Don't cheat on her. That's important. I've never done that, as far as I know. But that's a very bad no-no. That's a betrayal. Don't betray people unless they've broken your trust first, and it's unrepairable. And by that I mean, if a friend turns out to be a complete raging lunatic, walk away from them, basically. Don't sleep around behind your woman's back or in front of her. Don't do the cuckold open relationship crap. One man, one woman, and have children. Be tough in the face of danger. Be smart in the face of puzzles or problems. And be casual, loving with the woman. And a little bit of discipline as well on top of those principles for the children. But you'll learn some of that through experience with the girlfriend as a man. And just kind of like next level the responsibility you have for them with the children as well as the woman. Yeah, yeah, and the gentleness.